On today's show, DeAndre Hunter made his debut for the Cavs, and I think he's going to make a big difference on this team. Plus, we'll talk about Evan Mobley's dominant night and what he's been doing lately on the floor for the Cavs because there's a lot to like. We'll talk about that and so much more on this Tuesday edition of Locked On Cavs.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, everybody? My name is Danny Cunningham. You might know me from my time covering the Cleveland Cavaliers, places like my Substack, The Inside Shot, Cleveland Magazine, 92.3 The Fan, and a number of other stops along the way. I want to say thank you to you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review. Be a friend. Tell a friend about Locked On Cavs. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure a friend is subscribed as well. And if you're watching the show on YouTube, do me a favor. Hit that thumbs up button for me. Click subscribe. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. A proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Also, make sure you are signed up for the Locked On Cavs daily newsletter. It is your one stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox every single weekday. Sign up for free now at lockedondaily.com. That is lockedondaily.com. The Cleveland Cavaliers beat the Minnesota Timberwolves 128-107 Monday night, and the much anticipated debut of DeAndre Hunter, I thought went really well for the Cavs. So he was in the starting lineup in his first game, which I don't necessarily think was something that was planned when they acquired him via trade last week, but Max Strus didn't play in this game because of a sore right ankle. So that led to Hunter getting the call. And part of that is because without Strus, obviously Isaac Okoro already out with a shoulder injury. He's not going to play until after the All-Star break. Dean Wade currently out with a knee injury. He's not going to play until after the All-Star break. So there really wasn't another option for the starting small forward spot on Monday night. I think in a perfect world, Max Strus probably starts and the Cavs have a better opportunity to ease DeAndre Hunter into this, but I thought he looked really good. He played physical defense on Anthony Edwards, and he was a big part of the reason why Minnesota struggled so mightily offensively in that first quarter. The Wolves only scored 12 first quarter points. They were, I believe, 2 of 21 from the floor in the first quarter, which I know for sure is the fewest amount of made field goals that an NBA team has had in a single quarter this season. I think it's the worst quarter of offense I've ever covered in my 10 years being around the NBA in any capacity. I cannot remember a single quarter that was as bad offensively as what the Wolves went through in the first quarter on Monday night. And I thought DeAndre Hunter was a big part of that. He defended Anthony Edwards really, really well early on in this game. And Edwards finished going for 44. And we can talk about how and why that happened. And I don't necessarily think that that stuff is a reflection of DeAndre Hunter, not to say that he was perfect by any stretch of the imagination, because he wasn't, but I don't think that it's all a reflection of him. And Hunter, I think, is somebody who's going to be a game changer for the Cavs. And after one game, I don't want to jump to some huge conclusion, but I just kind of think that he was everything that this team was missing. And it's hard for me to say they were missing a lot because, listen, after this win, they're 43-10. They've got the second best record in basketball. They're a half game behind Oklahoma City for the league's best record. So it's not as if they needed a ton of help, right? Like, they were already a really, really good team. But Hunter gives them something they didn't have, and that is a dynamic, athletic wing that can do a lot on both ends of the floor. And Dean Wade is a really good role player for them. He is certainly a 3-and-D wing. But I think that what we saw, even offensively, from Hunter on Monday night is different than what Dean Wade can provide. Like, one of the three-pointers that Hunter hit was on the left wing. It was in the second half, and he pulled up after a couple dribbles. And just like, that's not the shot that Dean Wade is taking and making. That brings a different element to the Cavs offensively. And Hunter's not tasked with coming in and, really helping this Cavs offense, because the Cavs are already the best offense in basketball. Like, they really don't need help on that end of the floor. They need help on the defensive end of the floor, because they're not an elite defensive team the way that their personnel probably suggests that they should be, where they have some really elite defenders. Now, the perimeter ones, for the most part, have not been able to stay healthy this year, and that's a big reason why I think that they are entering Monday night 8th in the NBA in defense. I can't imagine they moved up. Their defensive rating was like 106 or 105 in this game, and I don't think that's a big enough step forward for them to move up to 7th. But defensively, they looked good for the most part in this game. Like I said, Anthony Edwards had 44 points, and I don't think like it was a dominant 44-point performance. And part of it was the Cavs decided that once the first quarter happened the way that it did, where they built a big lead, they were dominant defensively. As I mentioned, the Wolves only had 2 total made field goals in the first quarter, which is something I've never seen before. And part of it was poor shot making from Minnesota. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, the Cavs are the best defense in the league now because of this, but the Cavs were really good. I thought they were really physical too. And I thought that was a big reason why Minnesota struggled to get things going, to find a rhythm. Anthony Edwards, I think, missed his first 6 or 7 shots, which probably makes the fact that he did go for 44 points all the more aggressive. And I do think that DeAndre Hunter may have been a little amped up too. He finished with 5 fouls. He only played 23 minutes because he was in foul trouble. So it does make you wonder, okay, well, what's it going to look like in a full game when he actually gets to play a full starter's allotment of minutes? I think it's going to look really good. I think that he is a guy that he raises this team's ceiling. Like I thought that before this trade and their record, their net rating, like everything this team has done points to them being a true championship contender this season. Everything that they've done. Does that mean they're going to win the title? Of course that doesn't mean that. It means they're capable of it. Now, having to go through Boston is not going to be easy. It's still not going to be easy with DeAndre Hunter, but I think it makes it more palatable for them. I think that matchup becomes a little bit better. I'm not even saying that they would be favored in that matchup with DeAndre Hunter, but I think that they are better suited to handle that. And I don't think that DeAndre Hunter got cooked by Anthony Edwards in this game. I thought the Cavs decided, hey, we're going to try and play zone. We're going to play a box and one. We're going to try a bunch of these different defensive coverages, which I do think is a tough thing to do. And DeAndre Hunter, of course, is not on the floor for all of this because, as I mentioned, he only played 22 minutes in this game because of the foul trouble. But that is also one of the things Donovan Mitchell mentioned after the game is part of the reason why the Cavs are 8th in defense is because they're not playing just one coverage. And Kenny Atkinson talked about that. I don't remember if it was before or after the game, but before he got here, like this was a team that kind of did what they did defensively, and that was it. They didn't mix in a ton of zone. They didn't mix in a ton of other coverages. They were really good at what they did over the past several years with JB Bickerstaff, but they didn't really have an extensive defensive playbook. And now their defensive playbook is pretty expansive. It has a lot of stuff in it. So that means that because they're mixing and matching those things that, they're not great at all of those things. And that has led to some defensive slippage. I do think that Hunter came out in this game pretty amped up. And he got a great ovation from the fans as he was introduced as part of the starting 5. He got a pretty big cheer from the fans, which I thought was to be expected. And I thought that especially in that first shift, he looked like someone that was very, very aggressive defensively. He was really physical, and that's why he was in foul trouble. Like the fouls that he got called for the most part, were not cheapies. There was the one on Anthony Edwards where Edwards kind of got him on his hip, and I don't necessarily know that was a really great foul call, but there were some other ones where Hunter was certainly physical, and I understood why the whistle was blown, but that's going to be the type of defender that he's going to be. And because of that, I think this Cavs team is going to go to another level. And there are some lineups that I'm going to talk about coming up a little bit later on in the show that Kenny Atkinson mentioned as being able to break out if and when this team does get fully healthy, that should be downright terrifying defensively for any team to have to deal with. And the other aspect of this is the offense. And as I mentioned, DeAndre Hunter is not tasked with coming in here necessarily making the offense better because this offense is already so great, but he is going to provide another legitimate option for them. I don't think that he's going to be able to create as much for others as Caris LeVert was able to. Like that is a very underrated part of Caris LeVert's game was he was a terrific passer over these past couple of seasons in Cleveland. And DeAndre Hunter is not going to be that, but I also do think that he's going to be able to just do things as a bigger body that the Cavs have been missing in terms of being able to create for himself. The creation for others, again, not really going to be there, but he's going to be able to can take some tough shots. And the 3-pointer on the left wing that he hit in the second half, like that's just not something that really was part of the Cavs offensive playbook. And I don't think that's something that, like, if that's what they're relying on, it's probably not a great thing, but being able to use that in a pinch is, I think, a pretty good sign for the Cavs offensively. And then the one other thing defensively, just because there will be some lineups, and he spent a lot of time on the floor with Evan Mobley on Monday night. There were times where he was defending Anthony Edwards in the first quarter, and Evan Mobley was on Rudy Gobert. And the Wolves, of course, want to run a pick and roll with Edwards and Gobert, trying to get those guys in the action because, of course, that's what Minnesota does. Gobert is one of the best screeners in the NBA, and they're going to use him as such. Well, imagine if you're a team and you want to attack a big guy, and typically we don't see small pick and rolls, right? Like that's not a common thing in today's NBA. So you're going to see like these wing big pick and rolls, and even some wing small pick and rolls, or some small big pick and rolls that DeAndre Hunter is going to be involved in, and it's going to be him and Evan Mobley defending pick and roll. Like that is good luck. I mean, I don't know. I know that there's no perfect coverage for the pick and roll, which is why it has been such an effective play in the history of the NBA. But man, trying to score on those two, I think is going to be a really tall task for a lot of opponents. I think that DeAndre Hunter already has made the Cavs better. And I think that is something that's going to continue as he gets more and more comfortable. And I do think the other thing too, that's worth mentioning here is this acquisition comes at a really good time because he gets to play 2 games and then he's going to have some practice time. He's going to have some time to really dive in during the All-Star break to dive into what the Cavs do. And he's going to be able to get up to speed, and he's not going to be on the floor during that time because the Cavs will be off from their game Wednesday until next Wednesday without practices or anything like that. But that could be time for him to get those mental reps, to really dive in and really get his life in order too, because moving to a new city, not the easiest thing to do. Evan Mobley was also really, really good in this one. I want to talk about him, what he did against Minnesota, and how he's been in responding to a poor game against the Boston Celtics last week, because it's been really, really good stuff. So we'll do that next right here on Locked On Cavs. Today's show is brought to you by OpenPhone. Running a small business means you're wearing a lot of hats. Your personal phone becomes your business phone, and before you know it, you're juggling customer calls day and night. As your team grows, it becomes impossible to manage everything with just your personal number. You don't want to do that. That's where OpenPhone comes in. It's the #1 business phone system designed to help you keep your work and personal life separate. Of course, we want to keep those things separate. So for just $15 a month, cost of a few cups of coffee, that's not that much. You get complete transparency and visibility into everything happening with your business phone number. OpenPhone works through an app on your phone or computer and integrates with tools like HubSpot and hundreds of others. It also uses AI-powered call transcripts and summaries, so you'll have a rundown of your calls and action items the second you hang up. Plus, if you miss a call, no problem. Automated messages are sent directly to your customer, ensuring you never miss an opportunity to engage. So right now, OpenPhone is offering 20% off your first 6 months when you go to openphone.com/LockedOnNBA. That's OpenPhone, OpenPhone.com/LockedOnNBA, LOCKEDON, for 20% off your first 6 months. Again, openphone.com/LockedOnNBA. And if you have existing numbers with another service, OpenPhone will port them over at no extra charge. Again, openphone.com/LockedOnNBA. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. Like I said earlier, you can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review. Be a friend. Tell a friend about Locked On Cavs. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure a friend is subscribed as well. Evan Mobley was probably the best player on the floor for the Cavs in this game against the Timberwolves. So he finished the night with 28 points, 10 boards, 6 assists, and 6 steals plus blocks. I believe he had 4 blocks, 2 steals to have that breakdown. Like he was just a monster on both ends of the floor. And that is sort of continuing what he's been for the last week. So let's go back a week ago today when the Cavs lose to the Boston Celtics, and Evan Mobley might have had the worst game of his career. I think he finished with 7 points. He was 3 of 14 shooting. Like it was just a really bad game all around. And since then, he has responded the exact way I think the Cavs really wanted Evan Mobley to respond. The next night when the Cavs played the Pistons in Detroit, Evan was really, really good, really aggressive from the start, had a great first quarter, finished with over 30 points. Friday night, in Washington. Didn't have a great first half, but then scores 21 points in the second half, finishes with 27 points, I believe it was, and was really good down the stretch in that game. And then tonight, the third game that he's played since that Boston game, again, 28, 10, 6, and 6. Last three games, Evan Mobley averaging 28.3 points, 9 rebounds, 5 assists, 4 steals and blocks combined in these games. So he has been, since that game against Boston, a dominant all-star player. And that's why I think that game against Boston, yeah, it's disappointing that it happened in that spot. But he's been so good all season long that I need to see him have a few more bad games in that kind of spot before I really start to question, because I just do think that with the season that he's had, and he's earned being an all-star, there's no doubt about that. I think that he deserves the benefit of the doubt for that type of night, because this type of night has been so much more common. Now, he's not doing it every night all season long. I think that is in his future. Like, I think the guy he was tonight against Minnesota is something that is going to be in his future, because it's not just that he went out and, racked up those numbers. It's that he did it on 63% shooting. He was 12 of 19 from the floor, and that includes 1 of 4 from 3, because that 3-point shot still has not necessarily got back to where it was pre-calf injury. But everything else to me looks like the guy that was, made the all-star team before injuring his calf. And that, I think, is a really good sign for the Cavs, because when he's playing at this level, when he has games like he did tonight, the Cavs are near impossible to beat. And, Donovan Mitchell was good in this game. He was lower usage. He scored 23 points, only took 14 shots. He was 10 of 14. He hit some shots, we'll say, over Rudy Gobert. He looked to me, if we hop in our time machine and go all the way back to the 2018 playoffs, and you remember a certain LeBron guy taking just fadeaway after fadeaway after fadeaway against the Toronto Raptors. That's what Donovan Mitchell looked like on Monday night against Rudy Gobert, where he just kind of kept getting to the right elbow and taking fadeaway after fadeaway after fadeaway and cashed them in. And then he finished off that barrage with a floater, like a one-legged floater from 15 feet over the outstretched arm of Gobert. Of course, those two are former teammates, have a lot of history together. And I think that Donovan really enjoyed getting the best of Rudy in that matchup on Monday night. But it wasn't as if he had some high-volume, explosive scoring night. He was good, but Evan Mobley was the best player. Darius Garland was fine in this game. Not his best game, not his worst game. He was fine. But when Evan Mobley is this, the Cavs really are tough to beat, because I didn't think that the Cavs played a great game. I felt like they left a lot of stuff out there, particularly on offense early on in this game. Like the first 4 or 5 minutes of this game were just an absolute slog. The Wolves didn't score. The Cavs scored like 8 points in the first 5 minutes. It was not great offense for either team. And I feel like when you have that, you have missed opportunities. So I thought, okay, maybe this is not going to be the night for the Cavs. But then Evan Mobley appears and he takes over. And in the start of the game, I think he scored 6 of their first 8 points. And he was the guy that really showed up from the opening tip on the offensive end of the floor. And that is obviously a great sign, because when he's this, they're just not teams that are going to be able to beat the Cavs, particularly when you look at, and it can happen from on a night-to-night basis, but it's not going to happen consistently when Evan Mobley is this. So I don't care who they play, whether it's New York, Boston, OKC in the finals, like if that team shuts down Evan Mobley, that team is probably going to beat the Cavs in the series. If Evan Mobley plays the way that he did tonight, and, I think to beat Boston, he probably has to hit more threes too. Like that has to be a bigger part of his repertoire for the Cavs to get past that series. But if he's the guy he was tonight, it's a really tough challenge for anyone in the NBA to beat the Cavs 4 times in 7 games if he has this game every single night. Now, there's no guarantee of that happening, but there's also no guarantee that everyone else on the Cavs plays the game that they played on Monday night. But I just think that what he's doing right now, both offensively and defensively, is really special to see, because he's become an all-star. And I think as the season continues to wind down, and the Cavs are now 53 games into this, but we're going to start talking about Evan Mobley having a legitimate, I think, all-NBA case. And there are escalators in his contract, should he make all-NBA, that I think the Cavs have to start thinking, okay, well, that's going to be part of our future too. And they're going to be Obviously, very happy to pay that if and when that does happen. But I think that he is on track right now. And I haven't done a deep dive on this. So maybe he's like the 16th guy. But I think as of right now, he's on track to be an all-NBA player. I really do think that's the case. I think the Cavs probably are going to have a case for 3 guys to be all-NBA players between him, Mitchell, and Garland, because all 3 of them have been just absolutely fantastic this year. And all 3 of them, of course, are a big reason why the Cavs have a 43-10 record that they do. So after the game on Monday night, Kenny Atkinson, I thought, had some really interesting comments about what things can look like with DeAndre Hunter. And I want to talk about those comments and some of the lineups that Kenny mentioned that I think should be very exciting for Cavs fans. So we'll do that next right here on Locked On Cavs. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. If you're watching the show on YouTube, do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button for me, click subscribe, hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content, a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So the Cavs are going to look different at certain points now because they have a new player and they have 2 players that are gone in George Niang and Karis LeVert, who, Karis LeVert, credit to him, had a very good night for the Atlanta Hawks on Monday night. But now this gives Kenny Atkinson, who I sort of view as like this mad scientist with lineups. I just think that he is going to have the ultimate creative freedom now with the Cavs, with what he can do, because there are so many different options. Like he mentioned after the game, potentially being able to play DeAndre Hunter at shooting guard, which is something I don't remember if I mentioned it here or if I wrote about it. I think I wrote about it in my Substack, but like there are lineups that I can envision where maybe it is Donovan Mitchell or Darius Garland playing point guard. And this is not what they would close with, because when they close out games, they're going to have both those guys on the floor in the postseason. But you could have one of the guards on the floor. You could have DeAndre Hunter playing the 2. You could have Dean Wade playing the 3. You could have Evan Mobley. You could have Jarrett Allen. Who's scoring against that team? There are versions of this team that we've not seen yet, obviously, that can just become absolute defensive nightmares for opponents to try and solve. DeAndre Hunter totally changes that. Like he adds that element. It's not just what he is as a defender, it's what he creates in terms of lineup flexibility for the Cavs. Because when they do pair him and Dean Wade together, which I do believe will happen at some point, I think that's going to be something that they're going to be able to have a guy that is 6'8" with a 7'3" wingspan in Hunter playing at small forward, and then a guy that is 6'9" in Dean Wade, not sure what his wingspan is, but it doesn't have short arms, playing the 4 alongside Evan Mobley or Jarrett Allen. And that's going to be really, really good. That is going to be something that is very difficult for opponents to score on. And Hunter's not some defensive player of the year candidate, but he's big and he's physical and he has his wingspan is legit. Like that is something you notice it when I think you actually notice it a little bit more. At least I did night 1 watching him. And this will be something I'll have my eyes on as the season rolls along after the All-Star break when I see him in person again. I thought I noticed it more on his shot. Like the release on his shot is very high. He's not somebody that's going to have jump shots blocked. It's going to be very rare, if ever, that happens because that release point is so high because his arms are so long. But that obviously is a very big help offensively. And the other thing I do think that'll change with him defensively is he's going to, I think, be more aggressive in Cleveland than he was in Atlanta. I don't think that he was this as aggressive as he was tonight. I don't know if that's always going to be the case, but playing in front of Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen, or Evan Mobley or Jarrett Allen, depending on the lineup, is going to be something that I think gives him a little bit more freedom to be somebody that goes out and tries to create havoc, because that's not necessarily who he's been as a defender. I also do think that DeAndre Hunter should be the starting small forward moving forward for the Cavs. I think that he should be the guy that's in that spot. I think Max Strus should be coming off the bench. I think Dean Wade should be coming off the bench. And it's easy to go pull up DeAndre Hunter's basketball reference and say, well, the Cavs are 43-10. Why should he start there when the Atlanta Hawks, who, let me pull up their record so far on the season, but when he was in Atlanta playing for a team that was not as good as the Cavs, he was coming off the bench because before the trade, he had only started 4 games for an Atlanta Hawks team that is 26-28 after their win on Monday night. So why does that make sense? Well, it makes sense for him to come off the bench in Atlanta because what did they need from DeAndre Hunter? They needed him, and to his credit, he did this. They needed him to go out and score almost 20 points a night. He was averaging 19 points a night, which I believe is the highest mark of any bench player in the NBA this season. The Cavs don't need that. The Cavs' second unit doesn't need an offensive punch because it's going to have Darius Garland or Donovan Mitchell in it. It's going to have Ty Jerome in it, who's been very good. It's going to have guys that can go score. Now, can DeAndre Hunter help that? Of course he can. But I don't think that's the primary objective for him. I think his primary goal as a member of the Cavs is different than what it was as a member of the Atlanta Hawks. And I think that's why he fits into the starting lineup better. He is that true small forward the Cavs really have been searching for since LeBron James left for Los Angeles. And that was a really long time ago. Not comparing the two, obviously, but they haven't had somebody of this size and skill set that fits in so perfectly with what the Cavs have surrounding that spot. And for that reason, I think he makes the most sense to stay in the starting lineup. And for that reason, after watching night 1 of the Cavs with DeAndre Hunter on the floor, I like this trade, I think, more now than I did even last Thursday when the deal was made. I think that this has become an absolute home run for the Cavs. I really do. I don't know if they're going to go win the finals because of this, but man, it's hard to watch what he was able to do, particularly in that first quarter. Like, go back and watch the first quarter of Monday night's game against the Wolves, because that's when the Cavs kind of kept it simple and just let him go out there and play. Go back and watch that. And it's hard, I think, for Cavs fans to not be excited because there's a lot of potential. Like, if that's what night 1 looks like, and they're not always going to have quarters where they hold teams to 12 points. Like, that's an unrealistic thing. But I do think that the defense is going to be something that drastically improves. As I talk about the trends once a week here, one of the things that I'm going to be looking at when I do the trends are, what do the Cavs look like offensively and defensively beginning on February 10th when DeAndre Hunter made his team debut? Because I do think that we could look at this, not that there's some swing point with the Cavs season because they've been great the entire time, but I do think we could look at this and say, okay, they hit another level starting when DeAndre Hunter started playing for the team. It'll be very interesting to see. But thank you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review. Be a friend. Tell a friend about Locked On Cavs. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure a friend is subscribed as well. And if you're watching the show on YouTube, do me a favor. Hit that thumbs up button for me. Click subscribe. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. I will be back tomorrow as we get ready for the final game before the Cavs go off on the All-Star break.